Welcome to the She Wins podcast. I'm your host, Heather Sumlin, and today I'm joined by the fabulous Jordyn McKey. She is Miss North Carolina 2023. Oh, USA, I should say. Miss North Carolina USA 2023. And she will be giving up her title here in a few weeks. So we're catching up.
Soon.
We met at retreat, at the RPM retreat back in March of last year. And I'm just
Yes.
excited to get to catch up with you, my dear. How have you been?
I have been busy is the word. Good, but busy. Yeah, so we met at retreat last year at the RPM retreat. And I feel like when you and I first met, it's like I think I pretty much shared my whole life story with you, like at the drop of a hat, because I was just in a very sharing mood at that point in my life, and we'll get into that. Yeah, I mean, things have been good. They have been rapid fire. Life has been rapid fire. Any title holder has a life that's just because since like your calendar is full. I mean, you and I have even struggled
Mm-hmm.
to put time on the calendar. It has been a little bit of back and forth, but excited to get to do this today because it's definitely well needed. It's like a good decompress to always chat with you.
Oh, so fun. So let everyone know a little bit more about who you are. So go ahead and answer the whole tell me about yourself question.
Oh yeah, that's like everyone's hardest question, but you should know all the answers too. We hate this question, we love it at the same time. So I'm Jordyn McKey. I'm the current Miss North Carolina USA. I give up my title in the second week of June, June 14th and 15th. I've had the title for well over a year now. It's been really great to have and to be able to um, finally have this come to fruition, especially at a very pivotal part of my life. But I currently work in pharmaceutical sales. It's something that I'm really passionate about. I've been in the medical device world and pharmaceutical for quite some time. And that's kind of what I started doing when I first started competing, and trying to juggle that with being a title holder has been humbling, we'll call it. But I think it's really important that like a title holder is multifaceted, like we spoke about, and that was always my goal with being a title holder, was making sure that I was setting an example that wasn't just about pageants. Like life is so much more than that. And so a lot of what I've promoted and really tried to do throughout my year is be the girl who can do both. And a lot of my posts, you'll see those in there that, you should be able to do both things you want to do all things you want to do, and not have one label conform to your name. So that was always one really big thing with me. And another thing I'm super passionate about is what I like to call soul approval, spelled SOUL, knowing who you are, what makes you different, and how that makes you uniquely advantageous to society. And I think something with me, and to always know about me, is I stand very firm in who I am. And I think my purpose is to help other people amplify and find their own voice and utilize it in a way that makes them advantageous to society. So just a little bit about me and kind of what my year has looked like has been trying to implement that, and just something that I stand really firm on.
Okay, so just to follow up on what you just said, tell me, how have you
Mm-hmm.
implemented soul approval during your more than a year of service?
I'm sorry, say that again.
How have you implemented soul approval during your year?
So soul approval for me, it started. I mean, I created soul approval 7 years ago now,
Mm-hmm.
actually. So it wasn't something that I was just doing as a title holder. It's something that I did far before that, which I think is so important. And most people don't, not most people, but a lot of people forget that you have the ability to do so much in life without a title. Like that's why you're here, to make an impact. And so some of the things that I've been able to do with that is um, one, just going into schools. I've spoken in front of sororities. I've spoke to high schools. I've gone to hospitals, speaking to young girls, teenagers, and just sharing them the importance of embracing what makes them different and how they can utilize that to the best of their ability. And I think sometimes I think people can get so wrapped up in what do I need to do to amplify my voice, or how can I promote my campaign or promote my platform, so to speak. And I think it's just as easy as not just talking the talk, but walking the walk. You have to embody everything that you say that you're going to do. And so for me, a lot of times, it's as easy as just advocating for it and being that person, being very firm in who you are, and not conforming to a societal norm. I think that that's always really important. And just by being an example of that, you were kind of doing your job in that way. And so that's been a lot of what I've been able to do, and just being able to speak on in front of large audiences about it and just share my story. I think I've been able to get that message across.
So we always tend to ask everyone some of the same questions. All right.
Okay.
So how the title of my podcast is She Wins. So how do you define winning?
Winning, winning's great, but you win when you start losing. And I think it's so important that you fall down on your face a couple of times and you don't take it as a loss. It's a lesson. Um, to finally get that achievement, it's great. And I'll be the first to tell you that when I competed to be a state title holder 5 times. And I finally won on my fifth try. I was, if you want to call it that, I was a loser 4 times. And if I walked away each time and was like, I was a loser, am I really learning anything? Do I deserve to be the winner if I'm looking at it like that? No, probably not. So I think you have to define success by amplifying what you've done in the
Mm-hmm.
past and fixing it, changing it, being able to take criticism and change a few things. You're not always right. More oftentimes than not, you are not right, and it's just up to you to kind of figure it out. Nobody really has it 100% figured out. And if they say they do not, So I think for me, it's being able to accept failure is ultimately winning.
So what's something that you learned along the way then? That you're like, oh, that needed to be fixed.
My gosh, so many things. But I think one of the biggest things that I learned, and it really didn't even click for me 100%. It's like I knew it deep down. Like we always know something, but it
Mm-hmm.
never 100% clicks until like hindsight. Was letting go of it a bit. You have to let go of the want of it so much
Mm.
to allow life to kind of take its course. And that is so much easier said than done. And I have a hard time sometimes getting other people to get that to fit into their own life. I know that you know this, but for anyone who's listening, like the week that I won, my boyfriend was diagnosed with brain cancer.
Mm-hmm.
Competing for that pageant that week was the smallest thing I had going on. I didn't even think I was going to show up. It was the easiest thing that I did that week. And so being able to let go of it a little bit made it look like I was so much more relaxed. And so I think in your own way, and it's a personal thing, you have to find your way to kind of let go of trying for it so hard and just show up as yourself. And again, that is so cliche sometimes, but it is just so true. That's why people keep saying it.
I think it's also because you mentioned letting go of the want. I think it's also letting go of the when. Like when it's going to happen instead of worrying about like as long as you're thinking about it, focusing on it, pushing toward it, it's still a possibility. But if you let go of when it's going to happen, then
Mm-hmm.
you're way less stressed when you're walking into any room.
Oh, 100%. And that's not even just in pageants, just
Mhm.
absolutely anything. I mean, this has been the most rewarding, but the hardest year of my life, like hands down, and for so many reasons. And I have had to swallow the bitter pill over and over and over again because I am a stubborn human being, like most, that it's not up to me and it's not up to my timing. It's not up to, what I decide for myself. It's, I'm a religious woman and I have an unwavering faith and it's in God. And like, it was never up to me. So I could sit
Mhm.
here and want it, all that I want, but it's still not mine because he hasn't willed it yet. And so that was just as much as I know that. And I tell people all the time, like, you can know that all you want, but until you actually swallow that pill and like get it in for yourself and realize like you truly let that weight that you get on your chest, when you actually let it come off and go, okay, it is what it is. It's always going to be what he says. And I'm just here for the ride. You will never actually enjoy yourself and you will always be upset when it's not you.
Mhm. So tell me about a defining moment in your life if you had to choose one.
Um, one,
I know you've had more than one.
yeah. I've had way more than one. Um, I think so. I'm pretty vocal about this now. I used to not be, but I have had an attempt on my life, and I have struggled with mental health in the past. And I think really who I am as an adult all boils down to that day when everything happened. And I decided that day, it was as easy as a decision. I decided that day that I was going to create joy in my life, that I was going to stop looking at things from a negative lens. Um, Newsflash, you're not here to have a good time, but it is your job to make sure that you find the joy. No one's going to hand it to you. And I think the day that I realized that, that was probably the most eye-opening thing that I've ever had happen, but one of the most transformative and biggest 180s I think I've ever taken. It was always, why me? Or why is this happening? Why do I feel this way? Why can't I feel the joy? No one's going to hand it to you, Jordyn. Like, you have to make your own joy. You have to dance in the rain sometimes. And so, yes, when some of my harder things in life came on later, I had that perspective shift and I knew where to shift it at. And I knew, okay, this isn't the joy, but it's your job to find the light in the darkness. And so I think that definitely transformed my thinking for, or it has up until this point, and hopefully will continue to.
I was listening to a podcast literally yesterday where someone
Mhm.
they quoted someone, and I can't remember exactly who. It might have been Dennis Prager or something, and they said that happiness is a moral obligation. And I thought, ooh, okay, okay.
Mm-hmm.
And it just kind of it kind of hits. It's like, yeah, I should choose. Like, that's that choice. I should choose to
Right.
find the good thing, you know? Awesome.
Yeah, it is. I agree. It's definitely an obligation of your own. And one of the things that I always love that I heard a while back was happiness is circumstantial, joy is a birthright. But again, it's up to you to choose it. And
I like
so a
that.
lot of times, like, people look at, oh, this makes me happy now. There's a difference. Does it give you happiness or does it give you joy? And that's always a lot of things when I'm looking at a situation and I have to make a decision. I will ask myself, I'm like, am I happy or does it bring me joy? And a lot of times it'll answer a lot of things for me.
I do like the differentiation between
Yeah.
happiness and joy. I feel like joy is deeper and it's
Right.
something that can exist in the midst of pain and it can
Mm-hmm.
exist in the midst of trial. And we might not be actually happy, but we
Yeah.
are joyful because we
Mm-hmm.
know that we have to go through the trial to
Right.
learn the lesson and it's
Right.
going to all be better tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly.
So, do you ever talk about how, like, what was going on mentally when you had that attempt on your life?
Yeah. So at that point in time, I had had a friend who was in the hospital in the ICU because she had an attempt on her life. And I remember just a year prior, her mom and my mom were really close. And her mom had spoke to mine and said, hey, I'm a little worried about, my friend. And would you mind if Jordyn spoke to her about it? I knew she was a little bit younger than I was and or is. And I knew that she looked up to me. And I remember at the time not really feeling like it was my place. And now, again, now that I'm older, I still can see where someone would be like, I don't know that's my place. And I don't know that I don't feel like I did anything wrong by not. But at the time, when everything happened, I remember feeling a flood of guilt about it. And feeling, again, I know now that it wouldn't have changed anything. I've even spoke to her about it and she's like, Jordyn, it wouldn't have. Her decision was made at that point in time. But I just remember that I had like circumstantial guilt because of
Mm-hmm.
it. And I couldn't take it. Like I couldn't. And I will never forget. I think another one of like the biggest and most pivotal things in my life was when and it truly, and I'll just share this. I don't even know that I've ever actually shared this, but one of the things or the thing that saved me that day that I decided to make that 180 was when she was in the ICU. I went to go visit her. We were in high school, or she was in high school at the time. I was in college. So, of course, the hospital's flooded with people. They were letting us in by threes to come visit her. And I was waiting in line. I could see,
Mm-hmm.
everyone in front of me going. And she was, she was on medication and things and intubated at the time. And so everyone that came in, she was smiling and just smiling at. She was so happy to see everyone. And when I got to her, she cried. I didn't watch her cry for anyone. It's like I felt like I had disappointed her.
Mm.
And I remember having this conversation with her later. Um, of course, she didn't remember it at the time. And she was like, Jordyn, I can promise you, I was probably crying because I felt like I disappointed you. And I said, mm-mm. We were both looking at it that way.
Mm-hmm.
And I just remember I walked out like a ghost. And my mom was like, are you okay? And I'm like, I'm not okay. And I really need to go home, you know? And I remember that day feeling like, I remember feeling like I put her there. I
Mm.
know now that I did not. However, that's how it felt. And it was all too real and it was too much. And one thing went wrong that day that was completely beside that. And I was just like, I can't win for anything. Like I can't. But I remember in the midst of doing what I was doing, you know, in the act of trying to do it, I saw her face looking at me crying like I had let her down. And I was like, if I do this, it only tells her that what she did was okay.
Mm.
And I can't do that. So that day, I chose to live for her and not for myself. And I'm so happy that I did because she is the strongest person I know. And she travels all over the country sharing her story. She has a movie out about her life and her circumstance. And it is just, she is the most incredible person I've ever met. She is the backing of soul approval and why I think it's important to know who you are and stand firm in it. And I wouldn't have started competing without her.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's I, so you've never shared that before?
My friends and family know bits and
Mm-hmm.
pieces of it, but no, I've never really opened up, like, I guess, in the pageant world or anything like that, sharing that story. No.
Tell me throughout this whole journey, I'm going to switch gears a little
Yeah.
bit. So
Okay.
in this whole, I'm not going to make you go further, um,
Yeah.
but I think that that's very, very impactful. That it can be a moment that can change the trajectory of your life. When you think about your journey over this past 5 years that it took you
Mhm.
to secure that state title, is there anything? Did you ever have to find a solution to a difficult situation or a difficult problem in order to advance?
Um, yeah, and I think some of it's a mental game, and some of it were like physical things too.
Mm-hmm.
So, excuse me, I had strep last week. I'm getting
Oh,
over it.
oh, me too. Not last week, but the week before was me. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I
Got
know
you.
it's going around. Um, yeah, so I would say physically, there were things that I had to clean up. I mean, I started competing when I was in college. I won at 25 years old. I guess I was 25 when I won. There was a huge mindset shift in what I put in my body, what I ate, what I did working out, my discipline to actually do this and to do it well and not halfway. There were a lot of things that had to change. And so my mindset had to change, what I ate had to change, or what I would eat would have to change. And um, not to say that I wasn't eating things, you know, or depriving myself of things because I ate. Okay, girl, we ate some fried chicken the week that I competed. But there's a lot of things that you have to like shift. And but when I think about it as a whole, truthfully, it was all a mental game. Like it was either
Mm-hmm.
you want it or you don't. Like you're either willing to make the sacrifices or you won't, and then you'll pay for it later. I had a conversation with a girl who just recently competed for Louisiana the year before. She had placed really well. And she's like, what do I need to do to level up for the following year? And I said, you have to make it a lifestyle. You either want it or you don't. Just think about it. You don't become a title holder the moment the crown is placed on your head. You know, you have to
Mm-hmm.
make it a lifestyle. And I don't mean just what you're eating and exercising. Every single day, act like you already won, and then you will. Or let's hope that that's, you know, how it goes. But truthfully, it's just having to embody it and shift your perspective.
I agree with that. I think that it's the becoming. You become someone who is ready
Mm-hmm. Yep.
to hold that title because you're already doing all of the things necessary to be able to do
Right.
it. We become a champion before we're recognized as one. Totally get
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Totally agree. If so going back to the week that you won.
Mm-hmm.
So you said your boyfriend was diagnosed with brain cancer.
Mm-hmm.
How did you compartmentalize it?
I didn't, and I think that's another thing that the same girl that asked me, that was competing for Louisiana, I remember and I'm sure she wouldn't mind me sharing this. She had a lot of things going on the week before she competed, and she goes, Jordyn, I know you had a lot going on the week that you competed. How did you compartmentalize? And I told her, I said, you don't.
Mm-hmm.
That I showed up to my interview the most raw I had ever showed up to one in my entire life. I shared a snippet of my story of with my mental health. I had never shared that in an interview ever. It was word vomit and it came out that day. But I think, and I 100% believe this, as bittersweet as that was, I don't know that I would have won that week had that not happened.
Mm-hmm.
It I was so raw and I had no other choice but to show up 100% without a care in the world because that was the easiest thing I was doing that week. There were life is so much bigger than just doing a pageant. I love pageants, but there are real problems in the world. And so I remember I told her, I said, you don't, you use it. And I don't care how you choose to use it, to the depth of your soul, pull out your passion. If anything is going to make you feel, it's going to be some form of trauma or a slap in the face from reality. It makes you feel everything. And a lot of times when competing in a pageant, you have 2 minutes and 30 seconds, maybe 3 minutes if you're lucky, to show
Yeah.
to show them people, to show them people, to show people what you actually want to do, what you feel, and what you're going to bring to the table. And that is so hard to do when a lot of times, 9 times out of 10, you have people judging that either haven't judged a pageant before or they don't carry the weight of importance this has for you. They're just reading off of your bio, what's your favorite thing in your purse? Please don't ask me that. I'm here on a mission and I have a timestamp. And so it's a lot of times you have to use maybe that is what's going on outside to come in with so much passion
Mm-hmm.
that they feel it and they feel you because everyone's going to walk out and have a good interview. The interview is about you. It's really hard for it to go bad. But what makes it exceptional? Did you bring the thunder? And I just think using what you have going on, sometimes it helps, and it worked that week.
Well, and I think the way that how I'm internalizing and interpreting what you're saying is that it's not like you're using it for score. What you're doing is you're saying, no, I'm authentically me.
Right.
If I'm gonna put the most important thing that's going on in my life into a box and set it outside the interview room, and I'm not bringing it in and
It's not
letting
real.
you experience who I am, raw and awe, and
Mm-hmm.
all, then you're not gonna get the real me. And if you don't get the real me, you can't crown the real me. And I feel
Right.
like that's what you're saying,
I would have felt fraudulent if I
right?
would have put it in a box and walked up and went, hi, I'm so happy to be here. I was not happy to be there. I was very upset. I did not want to be there. All I wanted to do was go home.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember when I answered my top five question, I was the fifth girl to answer, so I was the last one. I came off and I collapsed in the wing and I cried. And I just kept saying, I want to go home. I want to go home. And the girls picked me up and pushed me back out there.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's, but I didn't, and I don't regret any of it. I hate that it happened that way. But again, find the joy.
Mm-hmm.
Like you've got to find the joy in the midst of the craziness. No, I was not happy, but I found the joy.
And obviously, it's been a very difficult year. Tell me the highlights, because there's probably been an appearance or two, a moment or
Yeah.
two, an interaction or two that has been that spark of joy for you. So
Mm-hmm.
let's end on the positives.
Yeah, for sure. So, um, I think okay. So actually, one of my very first appearances was I just again I felt that joy. It was actually right after I was at Duke because Carson had just had surgery. I just won like a day before, and I was like, well, I could sit around in the hallway really sad, waiting for him to come out of post op, or I can put the crown on and go down to the ICU with the kids and maybe make some people smile. And I remember that was my first appearance, and there was this. Well, there's two instances in this one appearance. When I first walked in, and at the time, I remember questioning like, did I make the right decision when I moved to Charlotte, North Carolina? Like I was still very questionable on that. And I walk in, and this little girl, she's a poor baby. She had tubes and everything hooked up, but but her smile was radiant. It's as if nothing that any would make you frown made her frown, right? And she sees me and she has a soccer ball in her hand, and she might be two.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and she comes running up and she sees the crown and she's keeps putting her ball on her head, like acting like it's her crown. And I asked her what her name was, and her mom goes, "Her name's Charlotte." And I was just like, uh, again,
Confirmation. Yeah.
just the confirmation that like I'm doing what I need to be doing. I'm doing what God wants me to be doing. It may not look the way I had anticipated. I might be in this hospital because of one reason, but you're drawing me into other things that are so beautiful, and it's so impossible to deny his hand in some of these things. So I remember that being my first appearance and one of the most beautiful things that has happened this year. It's like I could feel the wave of emotion with it. But another highlight that isn't necessarily an appearance, but was at Miss USA. And I'm going to take a sip of water because if not,
No,
I think I'm going to
no,
cough
you
on
go
this.
ahead. You go for it.
Um, so so of course, like a lot of girls when competing to be a title holder, a lot of the goal is to walk on the Miss USA stage. Like it's
Mm-hmm.
it's one of the big paramount things. And I remember during the preliminary competition, standing backstage, they have like the viewfinder, like where you can watch whoever's on stage currently as we're in lineup, and we're about to compete for swimwear. It's prelim night. I haven't walked out by myself yet. This may be the only time that I get to compete in swimwear on the stage. Like we haven't had finals yet. And I remember just looking at whoever it was, I don't even know who it was, that was walking on the stage at the time. And I'm like in the wing. And I just went, oh my gosh, I'm about to get to do this. And I just remember I had tears. I'm like, no, 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 no. We have to go out and be fierce. We cannot be crying right now. But I was like, Heather, that was the biggest. I've made it. I did it. Everything that was hard. Like you have to, like I said, you have to find your joy, but I felt the happiness and the joy right there. Like I've had that little kid like giddy moment. I was like,
Mm.
oh my gosh, I'm about to do it. I'm about to walk the Miss USA stage. And I remember like as I'm thinking about it and freaking it out, they're like, all right, come on, you're next. And I'm like, okay, okay. Like it was such a rush. It was everything I could have dreamt it to be. It really was.
So
That was just I'll never forget that feeling.
what was it like to be called into the semifinals?
Oh my gosh, like I remember that moment be just like being one too that was like, oh, like I get to compete on TV now too. Like that's it. I mean, it's just your heart's racing, and before you know it, you're already backstage changing, and you're back in lineup for swimsuit again. Like it just you blink and it happens. But I mean, it was such a rush, and there's actually a picture of me that someone got backstage after they called it, and I'm like this, like in swimsuit, like you could just see the joy on my face. And I was just so overwhelmed. And the goal for that, like my goal was to, of course, walk on the Miss USA stage. But the like icing on the cake would have been to make finals and get to compete on national television, have my people back home get
Mm-hmm.
to watch. And in that moment, like I felt like I won. I was like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, I won. I got to do what I wanted to do. And like everything else is just fun. Like we're just here. And that's really what it felt like.
What advice would you have? Like, last question. What advice would you have to someone who wants your job?
You don't have to do it like anyone else has done it. It's actually your job to make sure you do it the way you want to. um, I had so many people prior to my year and even during my year sharing their advice, and I think that that's so important. And I think even the advice that I'm giving right now is important, but don't ever like steer away from what you want to do. And if it looks different than what someone else has done, that's okay. It's actually kind of the point. Like we don't want a repeat year of Jordyn. Like we've already had Jordyn. Like get me out. It's very important that you come in and you really lean into everything that you want to say and don't leave a stone unturned. You're going to be very upset if you try to mimic what someone else has done, or even when it comes down to like photo shoots or planning out like your wardrobe. Do not give them what you think they want. I think one of the best examples of this was Arbany Gabriel. Like she gave no one what they asked for, but it was everything we needed. It
Mm-hmm.
was like, that's weird. Wouldn't have thought of that, but I
Mm-hmm.
love it. And that's why she went all the way. And so my advice is to take in the advice, but do it your way.
I love that. Take the advice, but do it your way. Jordyn, I'm so
Mm-hmm.
grateful that you have done it your way. We are going to spend
Thanks.
more time together talking to our Patreon members. If you're not already a Patreon member, go ahead and sign up. There's a link in the description. I'm so excited to talk to you more and get some advice for women, get some advice for our pageant ladies who are preparing for competitions, preparing to take your job, maybe. So have a blessed rest of your day.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.